The Ark of the Covenant, its existence, the Phi Ratio, and where it could be hidden. The Ark of the Covenant, called Kivotosis Diathikis, is not to be confused with Noah's Ark. It's also known as the Ark of the Testimony, and a few verses across various translations, the Ark of God. It's a gold-covered wooden chest of acacia wood, chest with lid covered, described in the book of Exodus, and contains 3 items. The second set of stone tablets from the time of Moses, the tablets of the 10 Commandments, according to various texts within the Hebrew Bible. It also contains Aaron's budding rod, and it also contains a pot of manna. In Hebrews 9:4, it writes, "The Ark of the Covenant was covered on all sides with gold, in which was a golden jar holding the manna, and Aaron's rod which budded, and the tablets of the covenant." The biblical account relates to approximately 1 year after the Israelites' exodus from Egypt. The ark was created according to a pattern given to Moses by God, when the Israelites were encamped at the foot of the biblical Mount Sinai. And after that, the gold-plated acacia wood chest was carried by its staves while en route by the Levites, approximately 2,000 cubits, that's about 2,600 feet, in advance of the people. So it was being carried about 800 meters, about almost a kilometer, in front of the people, in advance of the people, when on march or before the Israelite army, the host of fighting men. When carried, the ark was always hidden under a large veil made of skins and blue cloth. You remember what we talked about, the blue cloth, the blue cloth of Egypt, having to do with a certain type of, emitting a certain type of UV energy. And I'm just putting that as my comment here. Now, it was covered by a blue cloth, always carefully concealed, even from the eyes of the priests and the Levites who carried this. God was said to have spoken with Moses, quote, "from between the 2 cherubim," end quote, on the ark's cover. When at rest, the tabernacle was set up, and the holy ark was placed in it under the veil of the covering, its staves of it crossing the middle side bars to hold it up from the ground. Now the Phi in the Bible, the golden number Phi. The Ark of the Covenant uses the Fibonacci numbers, approximating a golden rectangle. In Exodus 25:10, God commands Moses to build the Ark of the Covenant, in which to hold his covenant with the Israelites, the 10 Commandments, saying, "Have them make a chest of acacia wood, 2.5 cubits long, 1.5 cubits wide, and 1.5 cubits high, 1.666, which is as close to Phi, which is 1.618, as you can come with such simple numbers, and is certainly not visibly different to the eye. The Ark of the Covenant is thus constructed using the golden section or divine proportion. This ratio is also the same as 5:3, numbers of the Fibonacci series. In Exodus 27:1-2, we find that the altar God commands Moses to build is based on a variation of the same 5:3 theme. Quote, "Build an altar of acacia wood, 3 cubits high. It is to be square, 5 cubits long and 5 cubits wide." Note, a cubit is the measure of a forearm below the elbow. And the same thing with Noah's Ark. It used Fibonacci numbers in its dimensions. In Genesis 6:15, God commanded Noah to build the ark, saying, "And this is the fashion which thou shalt make it. The length of the ark shall be 300 cubits, and the breadth of it 50 cubits, and the height of it 30 cubits. So, thus the end of the ark at 50 by 30 cubits is also the ratio of 5:3, or 1.666. Again, a close approximation of Phi, not visibly different to the naked eye. Noah's Ark was built in the same proportion as 10 arks of the covenant placed side by side. The number 666 is related to Phi. Revelation 13:18 says the following: "This calls for wisdom. If anyone has insight, let him calculate the number of the beast, for it is a man's number. His number is 666. This beast, regarded by some as the Antichrist described by John, is thus related to the number 666, one of the greatest mysteries of the Bible. Curiously enough, if you take the sign of 666, you get minus 0.80901,699, which is 1/2 of negative phi, or perhaps one might call it the anti-phi. You can also get this by taking the cosine of 216 degrees. The trigonometric relationship of sine 666 to phi is based on an isosceles triangle with a base of phi, sides of 1, and where this triangle is enclosed in a circle with a radius of 1, we see that the lower line, which has an angle of 306 degrees on the first rotation, and 666 on the second rotation, has a sine equal to 1/2 negative phi. So we see in this the unity of phi divided into positive and negative, analogous perhaps to light and darkness or good and evil. Could this sign be the sign as well? Phi appears throughout creation and in every physical proportion of the human body. In that sense, it is the number of mankind, as a mysterious passage of Revelation reveals. The colors of the tabernacle are based on phi as well. The phi bar program produced the colors that the Bible says God gave to Moses for the construction of the tabernacle. As it says in Exodus 26:1, quote, "Make the tabernacle with 10 curtains of finely twisted linen and blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, with cherubim working into them as a skilled craftsman. Set the primary color of the phi bar program to blue, the secondary color of the phi bar to purple, and it reveals the phi color to be scarlet. This reference to the combination blue, purple, and scarlet in the construction of the tabernacle appears 24 times in Exodus 25 through 39, describing the colors to be used in the curtains, waistbands, breast pieces, sashes, and garments. The construction and description. According to the book of Exodus, God instructed Moses on Mount Sinai during his 40-day stay upon the mountain within the thick cloud and darkness where God was, that he was shown the pattern for the tabernacle and furnishings of the ark to be made of sittim wood to house the tablets of stone. Moses instructed Bezalel and Oholiab to construct the ark. In Deuteronomy, the ark is said to have been built specifically by Moses himself, without reference to Bezalel or Oholiab. The book of Exodus gives detailed instructions how the ark was to be constructed: 2.5 cubits in length, 1.5 in breadth, and 1.5 in height. Then is to be gilded entirely in gold, and a crown or a molding of gold to put around it, 4 rings of gold to be attached to its 4 corners, 2 on each side, and through these rings staves of sittim wood overlaid with gold for carrying the ark are to be inserted, and these are not to be removed. The golden lid, or the kaporet, translated as mercy seat or cover, which is covered with 2 golden cherubim, is to be placed above the ark. The cherubim is one of the unearthly beings who directly attend to God. According to the Abrahamic religions, the numerous depictions of cherubim assign to them many different roles, such as protecting the entrance of the Garden of Eden. So the 2 golden cherubim above the ark. Missing from the account are instructions concerning the thickness of the mercy seat and details about the cherubim, other than that the cover be beaten out the ends of the ark and that they form a space where God will appear. The ark is finally to be placed under the veil of the covering. And in the Bible account, we have a mobile vanguard that they go before the Israelites. After its creation by Moses, the ark was carried by the Israelites during their 40 years of wandering in the desert. Whenever the Israelites camped, the ark was placed in a separate room in a sacred tent called the tabernacle. When the Israelites, led by Joshua towards the promised land, arrived at the banks of the Jordan River, the ark was carried in the lead preceding the people, and was the signal for their advance. During the crossing, the river grew dry as soon as the feet of the priests carrying the ark touched its waters. It was almost like the parting of the Red Sea, but this happened in the Jordan River. So the river grew dry as soon as the feet of the priests carrying the ark touched its waters, and remained so until the priests with the ark left the river after the people had passed over. As memorials, 12 stones were taken from the river Jordan at the place where the priests had stood. In the Battle of Jericho, the ark was carried around the city once a day for 6 days, preceded by the armed men and 7 priests sounding the 7 trumpets of ram's horns. On the 7th day, the 7 priests sounded the 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the ark come past the city 7 times, and with a great shout, Jericho's wall fell down flat, and the people took the city. After the defeat at Ai, Joshua lamented before the ark. When Joshua read the law to the people between Mount Gerizim and Mount Ebal, they stood on each side of the ark. We next hear of the ark in Bethel, where it was being cared for by the priest Phinehas, the grandson of Aaron, the high priest, where Bethel is translated house of God in the King James Version. According to this verse, it is consulted by the people of Israel when they were planning to attack the Benjaminites at the Battle of Gibeah. Later, the ark was kept at Shiloh, another religious center, some 16 kilometers, 10 miles north of Bethel, at the time of the prophet Samuel's apprenticeship, where it was cared for by Hophni and Phinehas, 2 sons of Eli. Captured by the Philistines, according to the biblical narrative a few years later, the elders of Israel decided to take the ark out onto the battlefield to assist them against the Philistines after being defeated at the Battle of Ebenezer. They were heavily defeated with the loss of 30,000 men. The ark was captured by the Philistines, and Hophni and Phinehas was killed. The news of the capture was at once taken to Shiloh by a messenger, quote, with his clothes rent and with earth upon his head, end quote. The old priest Eli fell dead when he heard it, and his daughter-in-law, bearing a son at the time the news of the capture of the ark was received, named him Ichabod, explained as the glory has departed Israel, in reference to the loss of the ark. The mother of the child, Ichabod, died at his birth. The Philistines took the ark to several places in their country, and at each place misfortune befell them. At Ashdod it was placed in the temple of Dagon. The next morning Dagon was found prostrate, bowed down before it, and on being restored to his place he was on the following morning again found prostrate and broken. The people of Ashdod were smitten with tumors. A plague of mice was sent over the land. An affliction of boils was also visited upon the people of Gath and Ekron, whither the ark was successfully removed. After the ark had been among them for 7 months, the Philistines, on the advice of their diviners, returned it to the Israelites, accompanying its return with an offering consisting of golden images of the tumors and mice whereby they had been afflicted. The ark was set up in the field of Joshua, the Beth Shemit, and the Beth Shemites offered sacrifices and burnt offerings. Out of curiosity, the men of Ben Shemesh gazed at the ark, and as a punishment, 70 of them, 50,070 in some translations, were smitten by the Lord. The Beth Shemites sent to Kiriath Jearim, or Baal Judah, to have the ark removed. And it was taken to the house of Abinadab, whose son Eleazar was sanctified to keep it. Kiriath Jearim remained the abode of the ark for 20 years. Under King Saul, the ark was with the army before he first met the Philistines, but the king was too impatient to consult it before engaging in battle. In 1 Chronicles 13:3, it stated that the people were not accustomed to consulting the ark in the days of Saul. In the days of King Saul, the biblical narrative at the beginning of his reign over the united monarchy, King David removed the ark from Kiriath Jearim amid great rejoicing, and on the way to Zion, Uzzah, one of the drivers of the cart that carried the ark, put out his hand to steady the ark and was struck dead by God for touching it. The place was subsequently named Perez Uzzah, literally outburst against Uzzah. As a result, David in fear carried the ark aside to the house of Obed-Edom the Gittite instead of carrying it on to Zion, and there it stayed for 3 months. On hearing that God had blessed Obed-Edom because of the presence of the ark in his house, David had the ark brought to Zion by the Levites, while he himself, girded with a linen ephod, danced before the Lord with all his might, and in the sight of all the public gathered in Jerusalem, a performance that caused him to be scornfully rebuked by his first wife, Saul's daughter Michal. In Zion, David put the ark in the tabernacle he prepared for it, offered sacrifices, distributed food, and blessed the people and his own household. The Levites were appointed to minister before the ark. David's plan of building a temple for the ark was stopped at the advice of God. The ark was with the army during the siege of Rabbah. When David fled from Jerusalem at the time of Absalom's conspiracy, it was also there. The ark was carried along with him until he ordered Zadok the priest to return it to Jerusalem. In Solomon's temple, according to the biblical narrative, when Abiathar was dismissed from the priesthood by King Solomon for having taken part in Adonijah's conspiracy against David, his life was spared because he had formerly borne the ark. Solomon worshipped before the ark after his dream in which God promised him wisdom. During the construction of Solomon's temple, a special inner room named Kodesh HaKodashim, that is, in English translated means Holy of Holies, was prepared to receive the house and house the ark. And when the temple was dedicated, the ark contained the original tablets of the Ten Commandments, the second set, that is, was placed therein. When the priests emerged from the holy place after placing the ark there, the temple was filled with a cloud, quote, "For the glory of the Lord had filled the house of the Lord," end quote. When Solomon married Pharaoh's daughter, he caused her to dwell in a house outside Zion, and Zion was consecrated because it contained the ark. King Joshua also had the ark returned to the temple, from which it appears to have been removed by one of its predecessors, 2 Chronicles 33-34 and 2 Kings 21-23. The Babylonian conquest and aftermath. In 587 BC, the Babylonians destroyed Jerusalem and Solomon's temple. There is no record of what became of the ark in the books of Kings and Chronicles. An ancient Greek version of the biblical third book of Ezra, 1 Esdras, suggests that the Babylonians took away the vessels of the ark of God, but does not mention taking away the ark. It's not in the inventory of items that were removed. Quote, "And they took all the holy vessels of the Lord, both great and small, with the vessels of the ark of God, and the king's treasures, and carried them away into Babylon," end quote. The rabbinic literature, the final deposition of the ark, is disputed. Some rabbis hold that it must have been carried off to Babylon, while others hold that it must have been hidden lest it be carried off into Babylon and never brought back. A late 2nd century rabbinic work known as the Tosefta. The Tosefta is a compilation of Jewish oral law from the late 2nd century, the period of the Mishnah. It states the opinions of these rabbis that Josiah, king of Judah, stored away the ark along with a jar of manna and a jar containing the holy ointment, oil, the rod of Aaron which budded, and a chest given to Israel by the Philistines. This was said to have been done in order to prevent their being carried off into Babylon, as had already happened to the other vessels. Rabbi Eleazar and Rabbi Shimon, in the same rabbinic work, state that the ark was in fact taken to Babylon. Rabbi Yehuda, dissenting, says that the ark was stored away in its own place, meaning somewhere on the Temple Mount. References in Abrahamic religion, the Tanakh, the ark is first mentioned in the book of Exodus, and then numerous times in Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel, 1 Kings, 1 Chronicles, 2 Chronicles, the Psalms, and Jeremiah. In the book of Jeremiah, it is referenced by Jeremiah, who, speaking in the days of Josiah, prophesied a future time, possibly the end of days, when the ark will no longer be talked about or be made again. Quote, "And it shall be that when you multiply and become fruitful in the land in those days, the word of the Lord, they will no longer say the ark of the covenant of the Lord, and it will not come to mind. They will not mention it and will not recall it and will not be used anymore." End quote. Rashi comments on the verse that the entire people will be so imbued with the spirit of sanctity that God's presence will rest upon them collectively, as if congregation itself was the Ark of the Covenant. The second book of Maccabees, 2 Maccabees, at the beginning of the chapter 2 says, "The records show that it was the prophet Jeremiah who, prompted by a divine message, gave orders that the tent of meeting and the ark should go with him. Then he went away to the mountain from the top of which Moses saw God's promised land." That's Mount Nebo. "When he reached the mountain, Jeremiah found a cave dwelling. He carried the tent, the ark, and the incense altar into it, then blocked up the entrance. Some of his companions came to mark out the way, but were unable to find it. When Jeremiah learnt of this, he reprimanded them. Quote, "The place shall remain unknown," he said, "until God finally gathers his people together and shows mercy to them. The Lord will bring these things to light again, and the glory of the Lord will appear with the cloud, as it was seen both in the time of Moses and when Solomon prayed that the shrine might be worthily consecrated." End quote. The mountain from the top of which Moses saw God's promised land would be Mount Nebo, located in what is now Jordan. Mount Nebo is an elevated ridge of the Abarim in Jordan, approximately 2,330 feet above sea level. It's mentioned in the Hebrew Bible at the place where Moses was granted the view of the promised land. In the New Testament, the ark is mentioned in the letter to the Hebrews and Revelation to St. John, and also Hebrews 9:4 states that the ark contained, quote, "the golden pot that had manna, and Aaron's rod that budded, and the tablets of the covenant." Revelation 11:9 says the prophet saw God's temple in heaven open, quote, "and the ark of his covenant was seen within his temple," end quote. Catholic scholars connect this verse with the women of the apocalypse in Revelation 12:1, the woman of the apocalypse, which immediately follows, and say that the Blessed Virgin Mary is identified as the Ark of the New Covenant. Carrying the Savior of mankind within her, she herself became the Holy of Holies. It is the interpretation given in the 3rd century by Gregory Thaumaturgos, St. Gregory, and in the 4th century by St. Ambrose, St. Ephraim of Syria, and St. Augustine. The Christian Church teaches that the Catechism of the Catholic Church, Mary, in whom the Lord himself has just made his dwelling, is the daughter of Zion in person, the Ark of the Covenant, the place where the glory of the Lord dwells. She is, quote, "the dwelling of God with men," end quote. In the Gospel of Luke, the author accounts of the Annunciation and Visitation are constructed using 8 points of literary parallelism to compare Mary to the Ark. St. Athanasius, the Bishop of Alexandria, is credited with writing about the connections between the Ark and the Virgin Mary. Quote, "O noble Virgin, truly you are greater than any other greatness, for who is your equal in greatness? O dwelling place of God the Word, to whom among all creatures small I compare you, O Virgin. You are greater than them all, O Ark of the Covenant, clothed with purity instead of gold. You are the ark in which is found the golden vessel containing the true manna, that is, the flesh in which divinity resides." End quote. That's the homily, the presentation of the Papyrus of Turin. Now, possible locations. Since its disappearance from the biblical narrative, there have been a number of claims of having discovered or of having possession of the ark, and several possible places have been suggested for its location. Mount Nebo, for example, in 2 Maccabees 2:4-10, written around 100 BC, says that the prophet Jeremiah, quote, "being warned of God before the Babylonian invasion, took the ark, the tabernacle, the altar of the incense, and buried them in the cave on Mount Nebo." informing those of his followers who wished to find the place that it should remain unknown until the time that God should gather his people again together and receive them into mercy. Mount Nebo is said to also described in the Bible in Deuteronomy 34 as a site from which Moses views the promised land, and apparently also is his final burial place. Mount Nebo is approximately 29 miles slightly south of due east from Jerusalem, near the east bank of the Jordan River. Another possible resting place is in Ethiopia. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church claims to possess the Ark of the Covenant, or the Tabot, in Aksum. The object is currently kept under guard in a treasury near the Church of Our Lady of Mary of Zion. Replicas of the Aksum Tabot are kept in every Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo church, each with its own dedication to a particular saint. The most popular of these include Mary, George, and Michael. In Kebra Nagast was composed to legitimize the Solomonic dynasty which ruled the Ethiopian Empire following its establishment in 1270, and it narrates how the real Ark of the Covenant was brought to Ethiopia by Menelik I with divine assistance, while a forgery was left in the temple in Jerusalem. Although the Kebra Nagast is the best known account of this belief, it predates the document. Abu al-Makarim, writing the last quarter of the 12th century, makes one early reference to his belief that they possess the Ark. Quote, "The Abyssinians possess also the Ark of the Covenant," he wrote, and after a description of the object, describes how the liturgy is celebrated upon the Ark 4 times a year. Quote, "On the Feast of the Great Nativity, on the Feast of the Glorious Baptism, on the Feast of the Holy Resurrection, and on the Feast of the Illuminating Cross." End quote. In his 1992 book, The Sign and the Seal, British writer Graham Hancock suggests, contrary to the Kebra Nagast, that the Ark spent several years in Egypt before it came to Ethiopia via the Nile River, where it was kept in the islands of Lake Tana for about 400 years, and then finally taken to Aksum. Archaeologist John Holliday of the University of Toronto called Hancock's theory garbage and hogwash, while Edward Ullendorf, a former professor of Ethiopian Studies at the University of London, said he wasted a lot of time reading it. And in 1992 interview, Ullendorf says that he personally examined the Ark held within the church in Aksum in 1941, while a British Army officer, describing the Ark there, he says, "They have a wooden box, but it's empty. Middle to late medieval construction, when these were fabricated ad hoc." So on June 25th, 2009, the Patriarch of the Orthodox Church of Ethiopia, Abum Pavlos, said he would announce to the world the next day the unveiling of the Ark of the Covenant, which he said had been kept safe and secure in the church in Aksum, Ethiopia. The following day, June 26, 2009, the Patriarch announced that he would not unveil the Ark after all, but that instead he could attest to its current status. In Rome, the Ark of the Covenant was said to have been kept in the Basilica of St. John Lateran, surviving the pillage of Rome by Alaric I and Gaisaric, but lost when the basilica burned. Rabbi Eliezer ben Jose stated that he saw in Rome the mercy seat of the temple. There was a blood stain on it. On inquiry, he was told that it was a stain from the blood which the high priest sprinkled thereon on the Day of Atonement. In United Kingdom, 2003, author Graham Phillips hypothetically concluded that the Ark was taken to Mount Sinai in the Valley of Edom by the Maccabees. Phillips claims it remained there until the 1180s, when Ralph de Soudeli, the leader of the Templars, found the Maccabean treasure at Jebel al-Madba and returned home to his estate at Herdwake in Warwickshire, England, taking the treasure with him. Ireland, in the turn of the 20th century, British Israelites carried out some excavations of the Hill of Tara in Ireland, looking for the Ark of the Covenant. The Royal Society of Antiquities of Ireland campaigned successfully to have them stopped before they destroyed the hill. In popular culture, the Ark of the Covenant is the main plot device in Steven Spielberg's 1981 adventure film Raiders of the Lost Ark, which depicts it as located by Indiana Jones in the Egyptian city of Tanis in 1936. It's mentioned briefly in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and appears in the cameo in Indiana Jones in the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. The Danish family film The Lost Treasures of the Knights Templar from 2006, the main part of the treasure found in the end is the Ark of the Covenant, and the power of the Ark comes from static electricity stored in separate metal plates like giant ladar jars. Yom HaAliyah, Aliyah Day in Hebrew, is the Israelite national holiday celebrated annually on the 10th of the Hebrew month of Nisan to commemorate the Israelites crossing the Jordan River into the land of Israel while carrying the Ark of the Covenant. So the takeaway is we still don't know where the Ark of the Covenant is buried. And of course, according to, of course, the New Testament, and I believe the Ark of the Covenant himself is Jesus Christ. I'll leave links below for you for this. This is read from Wikipedia. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.